Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and also on behalf of me, welcome to REAIM, to the REAIM Summit, and welcome to the REAIM Innovation Hub. You might not even be aware that you were in the REAIM Innovation Hub, but there you go, welcome. This morning and throughout today and tomorrow, this Innovation Hub will be the place where companies and organizations that work in various fields of AI will present themselves, will give you a little bit of an insight into the AI they are working on, the way they are integrating AI and technology into their and honestly your everyday life, and we'll give you a flavor of how broad and how vast this topic of AI, especially in the military domain, actually is. So we look forward to 2 full days of presentations, of interaction, and of opening up a little part of this black box that AI might be to some or even to most of you. We will start off with Chatterbox Labs this morning. Dr. Stuart Battersby will soon take this stage and I think take you along on the journey that we started this morning at the opening, which basically put out for us some of the main dilemmas that we are facing when we're applying AI into our everyday lives, and basically to look at where ethics and technology intersect and how to deal with that intersection. So feel free to have a seat, grab a coffee. I'll give the floor to Stuart now, and hope you enjoy, and I will be back with you after his presentation. So, Stuart.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Stuart Battersby. I'm from a company called Chatterbox Labs. And I'm going to talk to you about how to scale responsible AI across government and military. An important keyword there is scale. So I'm Stuart Battersby. I have a PhD in cognitive science. But most saliently, I've been CTO of Chatterbox Labs since 2011. And what we do at Chatterbox Labs is enable organizations to validate that their AI is ethical, is trustworthy, is fair. This presentation is going to be in 2 parts. We have a presentation first, but then I actually want to show you a demo of some software that you can really use to evaluate your AI. We look at the unintended consequences of AI. I think given that we're here, we're pretty clear that AI has many benefits. However, it needs those guardrails in place to avoid unintentionally wronging individuals, organizations, and societies. And this is true for anyone that is deploying AI, be that in the public sector, be that in the private sector. But how can you actually scale this? How can you actually do this? So what I'm going to do is give you a few key pointers and then a demo so you can get some actionable work here. First thing may be obvious, but it's important to think about the people in your organization. It's very tempting, because this has AI in the name, to push it straight to the data science team. But that's unfair. The data science team shouldn't be tasked with responsible AI alone. These should be organization-wide considerations. And when you look at that, it's important that the teams you pull together are cross-functional. So the data science teams are very effective at bringing in new methods, having the freedom to build and test the best models, but they're not trained in ethics, legal, governance, compliance, etc. So a well-structured team brings all of those perspectives together, but importantly, it facilitates repeatability in an organization. So when you move from 1 model to 100 models to 200 models, this team can be very, very effective. And we've seen a structure that works across 3 different groups: those that operate the platforms, that build the models, the data scientists, data analysts, but then a core team of people, subject experts, people from governance, legal, compliance, regulatory, and actually all the way up to leadership getting eyes on this stuff as well. So you get your people in place, but then you have to decide, well, what are you actually going to measure against? How do you evaluate this stuff? And this is your process. It's important that you have an ethical framework. The one I'm presenting here is from Deloitte, but of course you can build your own, you can adopt an existing one and adapt it. The framework sets out the sort of high-level principles, what matters to you as an organization. Often it aligns with your mission statement. Importantly though, it's got to be backed up by detail. It's got to be backed up by an effective AI controls process that details what you should do in different circumstances. And that's really the depth behind the process. And then we get to technology. I'm going to demo the technology platform that we have in a moment. The people and the process gets you so far. You have the right people in the room, you understand what matters to you, but then you need the facts on what your AI models and what your AI data is doing, so that the people that make decisions can do that in an informed manner. People talk about explainability. Explainability is important, but it's just one facet. There are many different facets for responsible AI. And again, when you look at a large organization, not just one model, but many, many models, repeatability is key. Repeatability so that the metrics that non-data scientists are going to review are consistent between all the different use cases. So there's only one set of metrics to learn. And repeatability across the different platforms that you use. Yes, an organization may be all in on AWS in the government, that would be AWS GovCloud. But they may also have on-prem, they may have custom-built models. They may operate in air-gapped systems that aren't connected to the internet. And it's important that you have a consistent layer across all of those. And so whatever technology that is used to evaluate those models needs to be consistent across all those cloud platforms and all those different models, so that, again, you can scale this across a large organization. Independence is a really key point. If you look to domains such as finance, where they have model risk management, there's an established process there for maintaining independence from the people that build the models to the people that govern the models. Same as a financial audit. You have independence in the financial audit process. That should be true in the responsible AI process as well. You avoid unintentional assumptions that people have made. You bring a different perspective. You do that from both the people side and the technology side. So you have a complete independence between the model build, the tools you use to build and train your models, and the tools that you use to evaluate your models. So how does all this tie together? What would a responsible AI process look like in an organization? Every organization is different. This is an example process. Along the top, you have the people in your organization, the people input, the client touch points. Along the bottom is our software platform that I'm going to show you, Amy. And working from left to right, first of all, before you do anything, is an education piece. Not just for the data science team, but for the wider organization to be aware of the issues, concerns, salient points about responsible AI. Then you get to the data. All AI models are trained on data. And if you take that from a legacy organization, that legacy data set may have bias in it. It may have privacy concerns. So evaluate the data set first. And you do that in an independent manner. Then you go into the model build phase. And this is important for independence. You allow the data science teams to have the freedom of choice over whatever methods they want to use. Don't constrain them. Allow them to use the latest methods. Allow them to experiment. And during that process, where they're used to checking things like accuracy, they also check for a plethora of responsible AI metrics as well in an independent manner. And that generates reports. Those reports go through to a checkpoint. The checkpoint is where you bring in the wider stakeholder team, government, legal, compliance, etc. They validate those metrics against the policies, the processes, the framework, etc. And if they are accepted, the model goes into production. It's doing whatever it was doing. If not, it goes back. And then, of course, this is AI, it's ML. These things aren't static. So they get retrained continually. And so this isn't a one-time process. You do all of this stuff, but then as you retrain your models, you continually check in, you rerun, you evaluate again. We've operated across a lot of different domains, but in particular we've worked in the military domain with the US Department of Defense. There's an independent evaluation report of our technology. If you'd like to find a copy of that, please email me. So what I'll do now is give you a brief demo of the platform so you can actually see it in action. This is the AI Model Insights platform. We call it AMI for short. It's easier to say. It's always deployed on your infrastructure. So if you're operating in a military environment, air-gapped, disconnected from the internet, that's absolutely fine. No data, no models leave that environment. It all operates under the security constraints of your environment. It isn't a platform for building or training AI or machine learning models. To that point of independence, they sit completely separately. So you would connect to models built in other platforms. These could be in AWS GovCloud, Azure Gov, wherever your models may sit. Importantly, once you've connected to those models, everything else is the same. So you could have hundreds of models running through here, and the teams that are evaluating those metrics get exactly the same metrics every single time. And what I'll do now is I'll walk you through our 8 pillars. Explain gives you the why behind the decisions made by your AI model. Your AI model has made some kind of prediction. Why did that happen? Think the key features in a combat scenario that a military model is making. It's paired very closely with actions. Explain tells you how you got here. Why did the system make that prediction? Action says, well, how could that prediction have been changed? And explain and actions work very closely together. You work with your subject matter experts from the domain who understand that in the real world and say, well, you understand this in the real world. Does this align the way the model is working with what you would expect it to be doing? Fairness looks for systemic unwanted bias. It does it both in the data, remember, before you train an AI model, and an AI model itself as well. For example, if you're working in healthcare, think Veterans Affairs in America, is there any systemic bias in those kinds of data sets and those kinds of models? Robustness tests your models to make sure that when they move out of lab, in that nice, clean test train environment, into the wild, that they operate as you would expect. Are they susceptible to adversarial attacks? Can they be gamed? Does the data in the real world mismatch what you saw in the lab? Will it operate as you would expect? Trace ensures that at that endpoint in your system, that the model and the data is still doing what you expect when you retrain it. It measures data drift over time. Testing tests your AI models. Yes, the underlying ML software is going to provide performance metrics, but in this notion of independence, you should evaluate independently to verify that, as with the typical governance process, and also generate additional fairness metrics if your model applies to people-based data. Imitation looks at your AI models that are probably trained, particularly in a military context, off secure, highly salient data. In a company, it would be a competitive advantage. And it says, what is the risk that that model could be imitated or cloned and give someone a competitive advantage, a leg up on doing the same thing? Very, very salient in this environment. And the final pillars look at privacy. Again, we apply this to both the data and the model. We look at the risk of re-identifying people. So, for example, in a military context, being able to re-identify senior military figures, being able to re-identify military establishments from the data. And we also look to see if the model itself is leaking confidential information. We do all of this stuff across tabular data. We do it for text-based data. We do it for image-based data as well. And importantly, you can access via the UI, but then you can integrate it into custom platforms as well. So when you're dealing with hundreds of models, you can automate this stuff into your MLOps process. You can access everything via the platform, but you can also generate reporting. And this is really important. We have raw reports, I'm not showing them here, that are for the data science teams to do their own evaluation on the metrics as well. We have these mid-level reports for those evaluation teams, governance, legal, compliance. If you're looking forward to things like the EU AI Act as it comes into force, think conformity assessment in these environments. They're very detailed reports that give an audit trail of all the metrics associated with your models. And then we also provide a leadership report, succinct key metrics that leadership can get their eyes on to ensure that awareness of all of this is org-wide. You've been through data science, you've been through evaluation, you're all the way up to leadership. And that's really important because whilst we provide the metrics here, as I touched on before, you also have to have the right people and the right process in place to interpret those metrics and build them into the context of your AI models. That brings me through to the end of the presentation. Happy to take any questions from the floor, or if you think of them briefly afterwards, you don't have to walk far, we're just there, so you can always come and find us.
Great, Stuart, thanks so much. I don't know if there are any questions in the audience already. If not, I would have one if I may.
Sure.
Because you briefly mentioned upcoming European regulations on AI. How do you expect those to impact the work that you are doing?
Well, we track it really closely, right? Because they're implicitly linked. Each jurisdiction, as you mentioned, is bringing through their own regulation. They tend to overlap. The EU is the leader of this. And we see that pretty much every business activity, not just in government, but outside of government as well, that is running AI or ML is going to be susceptible to these things. You know, people think about the big pin-up use cases, self-driving cars, etc. But actually, every day, decisions that typically would have been made by people are being either augmented or moved completely to decisions made by machines. Access to credit, etc. And those things are going to be very susceptible to things like the EU AI Act, and this ties directly into that, so that you can feed the metrics into things like conformity assessments as those emerge.
Yeah, and if I understand you correctly, you help enable companies that use the AI to make transparent the way in which they're using algorithms and how that impacts on their business and their results.
Yeah, absolutely, and importantly to be able to do that at scale, right? 'Cause it's one thing to do this once in a lab for a quick experiment,
Sure.
but actually when you need to do this repeatably, we need to do it across diverse systems. A lot of organizations are buying in models from third parties, ones they didn't even develop themselves, that they will be then using in their businesses, their processes, their government departments. And so, of course, there's a responsibility there as well. So making this apply in an agnostic way, no matter where the models came from, is really important.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Any other questions from the floor or from the bench, maybe? If not, thank you so much.
Thanks.
As Stuart said, Chatterbox Labs will be out here all day today and tomorrow. If you have more questions to them, if you want to know more about what they're doing, please visit their stand right here. And we will continue on this podium in about 20 minutes with our next presentation. So see you in a little bit.